Welcome to the BiggerPockets Money Podcast, Finance Friday edition, where we interview Mark and talk about money dates, true portfolio performance, and planning your future.
So the reason for that is because that $3,000 a month that's coming out of my portfolio is going to my wife, and we have separate finances. She's got student loans, she has a car loan and things like that. And again, when we ran the math so that she could stay home with the baby, that's basically bankrolling her cost of living expenses.
Hello. My name is Mindy Jensen, and with me as always is my one throat to choke co-host Scott Trent.
I'm liking that intro, Mindy. Thank you.
That intro is courtesy of our guest today, Mark, who introduced me to my new favorite phrase.
Mindy had never heard the phrase "one throat to choke" before. We all learn something new each
Okay.
week.
We do learn something every new on BiggerPockets Money.
Because Mindy is unable to continue, I'll take over for her. Mindy and I are here to make financial independence less scary, less just for somebody else, to introduce you to every money story because we truly believe that financial freedom is attainable for everyone, no matter when or where you're starting.
That's right. Whether you want to retire early and travel the world, go on to make big-time investments like in assets like real estate, or start your own business, we'll help you reach your financial goals and get money out of the way so you can launch yourselves towards your dreams. Scott, in addition to learning a brand new favorite phrase, I had a really good time with this episode. Mark has an interesting financial situation. He also has 7 rentals, 6 of which are doing great, and one of which I think he should really review the numbers again and potentially look into getting rid of.
Yeah, when the first 30 minutes of the interview with Mark, we uncovered a couple of things, but Mark's a millionaire. He saves a lot more. He spends a lot less than he earns. He's got a pretty balanced portfolio between equities and real estate. He's got a strong cash position. We can beef that up a little bit. We found a couple of things. A couple of cash properties might be cash flowing, and I think that's a good call out for anyone who's a real estate investor. Analyze your properties and determine if each one individually is cash flowing. If you have 7 properties and your cash flow is $1,000 a month, you have a very good chance of having a dog that is not actually cash flowing in that portfolio. Really good advice. And then if you have a financial planner, make sure you know what they're doing, because that was another big takeaway from this. But then we get into the real issue in Mark's portfolio about 30 minutes in, which I think is a fun twist.
Yes, I think that is a really good way to phrase it, a fun twist. I think that when you are running your own personal numbers, you need to account for everything. Every dollar that leaves your pocket in one way or another needs to be accounted for, and every dollar that comes in your pocket needs to be accounted for. So 30 minutes into this show, we
have a twist.
I think that's a good way to say it.
All right. And before we bring in today's guest, Mindy's attorney makes her say, the contents of this podcast are informational in nature and are not legal or tax advice. And neither Mindy nor I nor BiggerPockets is engaged in the provision of legal, tax, or any other advice. You should seek your own advice from professional advisors, including lawyers and accountants, regarding the legal, tax, and financial implications of any financial decision you contemplate. Mindy, let's go talk to Mark about his money now.
Mark, welcome to the BiggerPockets Money Podcast. I'm so excited to talk to you today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Mindy. I appreciate the time.
Before we jump in and give you advice, first we have to see what we're dealing with. I'm going to run through your numbers really quick. We have a salary of approximately $8,500 a month, which is no small potatoes. You're doing pretty well. Rental property income, which nets you approximately $1,000 a month after mortgages and property management fees. Primary residence mortgage. For your expenses, we have a primary residence mortgage of about $1,400 a month, and all your other expenses lumped in at $1,500 a month. This is clearly not the issue, so we're not going to focus on that. And quite frankly, Mark doesn't even keep track of his minute individual expenses because he knows that as long as he is keeping around $1,500 a month, he's doing just fine. And how does he track it? Well, he's got a running spreadsheet that dates back to 2016. So he is aware of what he's spending, and he just knows that this isn't where the focus is. So this gives us a grand total of personal expenses at $2,900 a month. Remember, back up at the top, $8,500 a month income, $2,900 going out. I think that's pretty good. He did note that his collective mortgages for rental properties is $2,400 a month. And I wanted to point out that rentals are a business and not a personal expense. So rental mortgages would therefore be a business expense. We're keeping his personal expenses at $2,900, which he says has been fairly consistent for a long time. Business expenses, this is more for people listening, Van directed at Mark. Business expenses come out of your business accounts. They don't come out of your personal accounts. On the investment side, we have $750,000 split up among 80% stocks, 15% bonds, 4% real estate, and 1% cash. We have $22,000 in an IRA, $16,000 in a Roth IRA, $34,000 in personal cash reserves, which I love, $11,000 for the business cash reserves, which I am going to talk with him about in a bit, $850,000 in total real estate value, $400,000 in mortgages, giving him approximately $450,000 in equity in his rental properties. So, Mark, welcome to the show. What can we help you with? What are your goals for this, for your financial situation?
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Mindy and Scott. I really appreciate the time. Big fan of BiggerPockets and BiggerPockets money for sure. So today I really just kind of want a second set of eyes. I've got a lot of, call it balls up in the air at this point, between the real estate, the stocks, the bonds. And I'd like to see if there's any opportunities for improvement. It's kind of the old adage of, I don't know what I don't know. I've definitely been a student of money for a long time, student of the BiggerPockets, for sure. But with that being said, I also consider myself a lifelong learner, and I'm always open for feedback and recommendations.
Awesome. What are the goals that you have?
So to provide you a little bit of background, I just had, my wife and I just had a baby girl, about a year and a half ago. I did not want her to go to daycare. So she actually stayed at home with me while I worked from home for about the first 8 months or so. My wife was a teacher. So when the school year ended, we decided that she would actually stay home with the baby. We had conversations amongst ourselves, amongst the financial advisor as well, and really kind of determined that we would be able to cash flow $3,000 a month from just the investments. Which would allow her to support the baby and stay home kind of indefinitely. She does plan on going back to work, once the child's in school. But for the time being, that's kind of where we're at. We do, for the most part, have separate finances. So, I think my goal being is, realistically, what options might we have for, one of us at least to retire, if you will, indefinitely. I think there's a little bit of golden handcuffs on my side, if you will, which we can certainly talk about as well. Mindy, you mentioned the I think you said it was the 85K, but with commissions, my total yearly W-2 take home is about 155K. So it's the cost benefit analysis of do I stay in that position or do I become a stay-at-home dad? So that's kind of where we're at.
Love it. Could you give us a 3-minute background on your money story, how you got to this position? Because you're in a strong position. I probably have some good news for you on the goals that you're asking about.
Okay. Yeah. So I've always been interested in real estate. My father dabbled in the real estate game. He was a white collar professional growing up, but I guess you could say it was his side business. He cash flowed from some rental properties. So for quite a while growing up, I saw the benefits of owning real estate. And then kind of after college, and I was fortunate enough to be on scholarship throughout college and graduate school. So I didn't come out with any student loan debts. So after college, once I kind of started my career, I started saving money, educating myself. Obviously found my way through BiggerPockets, and slowly but surely just started buying rental properties. All of mine are the turnkey model. I know some people like that, some people don't. I'm happy to discuss, why I chose that model, and ultimately now we're here.
Awesome. And could you give us a breakdown of, a typical turnkey purchase? I would love to hear why turnkey and then what that is, how those cash flow.
Yeah, for sure. So I use a one particular provider, where they essentially buy, call it dilapidated properties. They do the fix and flip internally. Then they sell it, call it retail, to investors like myself. Then they also have an in-house property management company. They have in-house repair personnel. Everything is one throat to choke in-house. So there's really no finger pointing between anybody. I guess, to be honest with you,
Which firm do you use?
I use Mid-South Home Buyers
Mid South Home Buyers. Okay.
out of Memphis, Tennessee.
I'm sorry, I've never heard that term. One throat to choke.
You've never heard that before?
Oh, I use it all the time, Mindy.
Yeah, choke slamming people over here. So
Clearly, you seem the type.
Could you walk us through the numbers on a recent purchase and how you arrive at cash flow for that?
yeah, for sure. So I mean, again, they actually set the price because, especially this provider, they do such a good job that the demand is very high. The waiting list to get a property for them is usually about 12 to 18 months. So I purchased the property using the conventional 20% down. And then on average, I usually cash flow about 200, 250, $300 a month per property. And they're single family homes, or, well, most of them are single families. I do have a duplex that they sold. But yeah, that's kind of where we're at. Price points used to be as low as about 60.
So you think that's a conservative estimate of cash flow at 150, $250 a month?
That's where they started, yeah. But now with the rents going up, it's definitely more.
So you told, I think we have earlier stated you have $1,000 in cash flow per month after accounting for conservative things like capex allotment, vacancy, those types of things. What do you think is a conservative number for cash flow from rental properties, and what's a more believable likely estimate if it's higher than that?
Yeah. So, well, the $1,000 I mentioned was the all up number between all of the rental properties. So, I think actually this month I'll actually probably net closer to about 2,000. Last month it was about 1,700. But then again, you'll have the months where I have to do a get ready and a tenant's leaving, and I'll lose $2,000.
All right, Mark, could you give us some of the numbers on one of the recent purchases? Let's walk through it.
Yeah. So one of the most recent ones I purchased for 97.5. And as of right now, according to Zillow, it's actually worth about 103.9. So it's already gone up several $1,000s. The rent on that is $775. Again, that's not accounting for the 10% property management fees or anything like that. And I believe, the mortgage on that is going to be the $416.18. So about $400 a month. So again, roughly $200-$300 a month in cash flow on that particular property, and that's about the same across the board for all of them.
Awesome. Let me provide a couple of thoughts here. $775 in rent minus a 10% management fee is $77.50 per month. We have a $416 mortgage each month. I'm going to allocate $60 for you in vacancy costs. That's about 8%. You're not going to have that property occupied year in and year out long term. Hopefully you beat that, but that's a good conservative estimate for vacancy. And then I'm going to estimate $100 for maintenance. And because it's a turnkey property and hopefully everything is brand new, I'm going to estimate $75 per month in capex. That's for your roof in 15 years, those types of things. So that leaves you about $50 in cash flow, which is still positive. So you're making money on this investment most likely, I think, with some conservative vacancy, maintenance, and capex numbers. Those maintenance and capex numbers will increase 10 years from now. But hopefully you have a fairly well-conditioned unit if you got a reputable turnkey provider there.
Yeah, and that's a good point. And again, that's actually one of the reasons that I choose the turnkey providers is because they do everything from the roof to the HVAC systems, and Mindy, it's one throat to choke at the end of the day. So new floors and everything like that.
I think it's great, and I think there's every reason to expect those expenses to be lower. If you weren't using a turnkey provider, I'd be telling you you need no less than $150 per month for maintenance, and probably the same for capex. Hopefully, we've got a better deal there, but you want to be conservative with those. But that will depend, and I think that. But you're not cash flowing $250 in this property. Might hit your bank account some months, but other months you're going to get a $2,000 dinger or a turnover event or something that's going to wipe that out.
Yeah, and you're right. And like kind of Mindy mentioned at the beginning of the show, is like I track the monthly cash flow from all of these properties, and that's a perfect example. Like last December, I was actually negative about $1,200 for that exact reason, to get ready, where they had to flip for a tenant. Another month earlier this year, I netted all of $26 for the same reason. So, it definitely all averages out.
Yep. So I would just think about it whenever you're analyzing a new property. Think about it in terms of those averages and bring down those expectations to account for the things that you can't see, which include vacancy, maintenance, and capex that will come in. Those are the big ones that are hard to see. You obviously know the management expense, of course. If you have any utilities that you pay, probably not. Those will be things you should include in as well. So, okay. And so if I were to include those items in your overall estimate, does that change your cash flow number? Does that reduce it from $1,000 a month you anticipate to something lower?
Oh yeah, probably. So the $1,000 a month again is just the average of what's actually hitting my bank account. So we'd have to do whatever. What did you mention per property or per door, if you want to do it that way?
I think you should estimate an 8% vacancy rate per property. That's 1 month of vacancy. I like that because we have a great property manager, a good property manager. They will probably charge you about 50% of the first month's rent, and they should be able to turn around the property very quickly within 2 weeks.
This particular provider, knock on wood, there's never been, whenever the first tenant moves out, the next tenant moves in the very next month, which has been fantastic.
Great. So you go a week or two with vacancy, and then they have a new person in?
Correct. Yeah. And again, that a lot of that's contingent upon what the get ready looks like. Sometimes it's just cosmetic stuff. Sometimes it's more. But there's never been, I don't think I've ever gone a month without with vacancy.
Perfect. But you are paying them a half month rent, most likely, for placing the new tenant.
I believe that's correct. Something along those lines, yes.
That's why I like to use 1 month vacancy or 8%, is because you've got the 2 weeks turn plus the 50% of that first month's rent going to your management company, which I put into the vacancy column. You could put it into the management expense, but I like to allocate it mentally in the vacancy thing. So 8% vacancy is what I would recommend you always account for on these properties. And that assumes one turnover event per year. Hopefully your tenants stay a little longer and you only have that turnover event once every 2 or 3 years and you beat that number, but it's a good conservative number to underwrite to.
Okay, cool.
In my opinion. And then I think that if you have an older property, you got to assume, a big yard that's unkempt or whatever. You're in the southeast, you're going to have to do that. But you'll have $250 a month in maintenance would be my allocation for a turnkey property. I'd hope that would be less, which is why I've allocated 100 for yours mentally. And then for capex, depending on the condition of the property, this is anybody's guess, but an older property needs a lot of work and you've got deferred maintenance, I'd budget $250 or $300 a month. For a newer property or one that's been recently remodeled or turned by a reputable turnkey provider, maybe you need less, and I'd allocate $75 or $100 a month.
Okay.
So those would be some rules of thumb that I would put in there, and that will help you actually know your cash flow over the course of a year. So.
Gotcha. Okay. Cool.
And your numbers will prove it out over time. You'll know if you're too high or too low, and you'll get your averages. You probably have enough historical data already to give yourself a good guess at what those should be.
Actually, yeah. Over the past 2 years, I'm averaging $1,100 a month net cash flow, and that's turnover events and what have you.
Great. So we're probably in a good spot there. Do you have any properties that you think are particularly are not cash flowing out of that? Because you're 7 properties with $1,100. That means each property is averaging about $125. It begs the question: is there a loser in that mix that could be one to sell?
I don't think so. Not at least not at this point. I do have concerns over one of my particular tenants. So I purchased the duplex from another investor, so it wasn't like a brand new, net new turnkey model. However, it was purchased from Mid Health from the investor, and then I purchased it. So call it certified pre-owned, if you will. And one of the tenants is on a month by month lease, which I'm not that big of a fan of. So I'm not looking forward to that. Get ready when that happens.
I have a comment, Scott. I do have the privilege of seeing all of the numbers that you have shared. I'm looking at investment property 6, where the rent is $775 and the payment, it looks like the mortgage payment is $699.
Yep. So that was one of the newer ones. I think the provider or the lender that I used required me to do 25% down. I don't really remember why that mortgage payment is as high as it was, but I was kind of shocked when that happened as well.
Well, that's a great one to go looking for. You're probably losing money on that one.
So
yeah.
What is that? What did you purchase it at versus what is it worth now? Are there any opportunities to change it out? Have you thought about a short-term rental model or a medium-term rental model?
I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not that big of a fan of the short-term models, the Airbnb piece. I know that they can make a lot of money, but they also require a lot of management. And if I was to do something like that, I'd definitely hire a property management firm as well. For me, I just kind of like to set it and forget it. And have my tenants in there for at least a year.
Okay. And that's totally valid. I love that you know what you like and you know what you don't like, and you don't want to just like throw spaghetti on the wall and see what sticks. I love that. I am going to try and throw one more thing at you. There's the medium-term rental concept where you're still doing the furnished rental, so you're getting more income because people aren't traveling with their stuff, but they're staying longer. It's a way to get... I have to be careful the way I word this. You're not getting around short-term rental laws because you're not doing short-term rental. These are minimum 30-day stays, and it's more like traveling nomads, traveling professionals, traveling nurses, or military. It's people who have, sometimes they have a stipend to travel. Sometimes they are just, out and about traveling, all us frugal weirdos that are travel-fi people. And they are willing to pay a higher rent because they are unwilling to sign a 1-year lease. In general, there's less turnover. It's a $150 cleaning fee that you can charge them versus $10,000 in turnover costs when you're replacing the carpet and doing all of that sort of thing. We have a new book coming out. BiggerPockets has a new book coming out. It's so new, I don't even know the actual name of the book, which is really poor planning on my part, but it is about medium-term rentals. I'm going to send you a copy so you can read through it and really determine, hey, this looks really interesting, or you know what, I'm going to stick with this. But that could be a way to juice some returns on this property that isn't such a return winner right now. And maybe that one isn't in the right neighborhood to do a medium-term rental, or maybe it's located, across the street from a corporate park, or by a football stadium, or, by something exciting where people want to come and see things. A great way to just look for this is to go on VRBO or Airbnb and just search for rentals in your area and see what's available. And based on the makeup of this particular property, let's say it's a 3-bedroom, 4-bath house, see what other 3-bedroom, 4-bath houses are out there and what they're renting at for month-long rentals.
Okay.
So maybe you could juice your returns on that one a little bit. And the same with the duplex. If you've got a big turnover coming up, maybe that would be worth it to turn it into a furnished rental. But you don't have to do the whole properties, but that's an option. So just a bit of homework.
I completely agree with Mindy's premise here, though, that $775 in rent and a $700 mortgage payment, this property is going to suck cash out of your life until you sell it or until many years pass. So you could make money. It could go up in value. You could amortize a loan, but it's not a property I would invest in. And I'm on team sell if you're not interested in short-term or medium-term rentals, and just reposition it into another one of these other properties or use it to pay down debt. or something like that.
Yeah. And
Okay.
and if you are going to turn it into a different property, look into a 1031 exchange.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I
For
don't
sure.
think it matters if you bought it yesterday. You can still 1031 into something else because you purchased it as an investment property and now you're going to buy another investment property. To get a 1031, you need to have a qualified intermediary. That's a specific job title. Qualified intermediary to hold your hand throughout the whole process. They take possession of the money and then buy the next house for you. I mean, they don't, you still buy it, but there's a lot of hoops you have to jump through to make it work, but it's worth it because then you're not paying any taxes on the gains. You're just kicking that can down the road. So that is another homework opportunity to look into. And you don't have to make any of these decisions right now. That's just something to look into and see if it makes sense.
Okay, cool.
You said something about you're taking $3,000 a month in cash flow. Are you selling down stocks?
So the majority of that is coming from the dividends popped off by the stocks. Full transparency, my financial advisor handles the majority of that. When we ran projections on that, I don't know, several months ago, he showed me that it could work. So some of it's the dividends on the stocks, and then I believe we're selling down some bonds as well.
And have you looked into the tax implications of that?
Yeah, so I am going to get taxed on it, but we also did something, if I can remember what he called it, tax depreciation, where essentially we sold some stocks and then bought some at a lower rate, where it essentially would offset the taxes, if that makes sense at all.
Is that tax loss harvesting?
There you go. That's what I was looking for.
Let me. I think I know the answer to this question. How does your financial advisor make money?
He makes money off of me.
You pay him by the hour, or do you pay him based on assets under management?
No, it's assets under management.
I am not a fan of that, and my instinct every time I hear that is move on from the financial advisor in those cases, because I think if you're not paying your financial advisor by the hour, you're paying them out the wazoo in terms of fees that they're going to be harvesting from your portfolio, often in the 1-2% range.
No, it's a lot less than that. I think it's actually a 0.1% or something like that. The firm is actually called Creative Planning, and we can actually cite some of the books that I did the research on. According to everything that I've read, they actually had the lowest fees across the entire industry.
Fair enough. I will look at Creative Planning and take a look at them after this. But I do think that you have some homework to do in understanding what your financial planner is doing with this portfolio, because this is most of your net worth. We just talked about a minority of your net worth in your rental property portfolio, but the more than half of it is going to be in this stock portfolio. And I think not knowing what's going on there is going to be is a major homework assignment for you in a general sense. But
okay,
I do want to just take a step back and zoom out and look at your position. You are worth $1.5 million, and you spend $3,000 a month. So you're done, right? I mean, in order to spend $3,000 a month, you need like $750,000. So just with your stock portfolio, you can cover all your housing and other types of things, and your real estate is gravy in terms of a traditional retirement planning thing. Do you plan to spend $3,000 per month on a go-forward basis, or do you want to spend more in order to achieve your financial goals?
For the most part, probably on a go-forward basis. Half of that is actually my mortgage as well. The $1,400 is cooped into that. So, the $1,500, as you mentioned, that's kind of at the beginning of the show, Mindy, $1,500 is everything from gas, food, insurance, phone bill, things like that. So that actually begs the next question of whether or not I should pay off my mortgage. I'm definitely in the camp. I'm definitely in the camp of not doing it. But to your point, Scott, I don't foresee myself significantly increasing my cost of living expenses anytime soon.
So then why do you, why don't you, do you want to quit your job? Do you want to hang out? Why do you?
Well, that's part of it as well. Because I'm clearing well into the six figures. Quite honestly, my job is not very difficult. There's the health insurance piece of it. And to be honest with you, I'm not entirely sure what I would do with my time if I quit. I could spend my days out on the water, fishing and doing things like that. But, I can't see myself doing that for the next 6 years.
What happens in 6 years?
I don't know. Nothing specific. I was just, saying further down the road.
Okay, my first comment is, why are you taking money out of your portfolio when you already make more money than you're spending at your job?
So the reason for that is because that $3,000 a month that's coming out of my portfolio is going to my wife, and we have separate finances. She's got student loans, she has a car loan and things like that. And again, when we ran the math, so that she could stay home with the baby, that's basically bankrolling her cost of living expenses. Whereas my finances, the money that I'm saving each month from the job, and this is actually one of the questions I wanted to ask you guys is being invested back into real estate. I just put money away for her college, home improvements and things of that nature.
So this is really interesting. This is like the other half of the story. So you're like, hey, Mark, you're worth $1.5 million. You spend $3,000 a month. You've got a good rental property portfolio, and you're able to harvest a lot of cash from your portfolio. What's going on? Well, it sounds like there's really a family financial situation that we need to discuss here as well. In the sense that your portfolio is paying for your wife. Is there a reason you haven't combined finances? What's the backstory behind that?
It's a little bit of an emotional one, because she's had the opportunity to pay off some of the loans and be more strategic with finances, and she's decided not to. So we don't see eye to eye all the time on finances. So it's kind of the agree to disagree at this point. So
there's a conflict in terms of household finances.
Correct.
And the resolution to that is you pay her $3,000 a month, and she does what she does with that, and you have your finances separately.
Correct.
I am not here to change your mind. She's not here to share her side of the story. And that's really not the focus of this conversation. You guys seem to have come up with something that works for you. So I don't think that we need to focus on that, but I also think we need to acknowledge that it's there.
I think it's a focal point of the thing. I think it's uncomfortable, and I hear that you may be at an impasse with your wife, but like I think that how that's cascading into our conversation today is Mark doesn't know what he wants. Mark, you don't know what you want from this. You're like, hey, I'm making bank. I have this big portfolio. Life is good. I could retire right now with the way I set up my finances for my personal expenses with this, but I can't really do that because I have another $3,000 in expenses that I got to bankroll my family for to a large degree, and that's part of the deal, even though it's not really. And I think that this is a major underpinning of the conversation. Is that accurate, Mark?
Yeah, that's accurate. And again, by and large, I don't know what I would do if I stopped working. I could be the stay-at-home dad, and then she could go back to work. But at the end of the day, that would be a teacher's salary versus, what I'm making. So it's kind of a no-brainer, at least for
I think it's important to talk about that because, that's kind of a no-brainer to keep. I mean, Carl and I had similar salaries. I was making basically a teacher's salary without being, the prestige of a teacher. And he was making a salary similar to yours. I stayed home with the kids because I wanted to stay home with the kids, but also it was not financially advantageous for him to stay home with the kids and me to go work. And then, we could just scrape by on nothing.
Well, and that's exactly what it is.
In spite of the fact that there is no formal agreement or you're at an impasse, you've effectively reached an agreement where you're paying her $3,000 a month and she is handling all of the child care expense, frankly, to a large degree with that. Is that so we do have an agreement. It's just not one that's been formalized or maybe arrived at the way that, in a way that's in alignment in a formal capacity. But I think going back to you and your situation, I think this is where you got to I think you got to think about what do I want in 3 to 5 years? It's as simple as this defining that. And an artifact for that is this vision document. And I've now said this a million times, and I feel like a cheese ball when I say the word vision document. But like, I think it's a tool that you might benefit from by like just go somewhere. Where do you like to go where you feel at peace and you feel like your life is good? I'm happy at this point in time. Is it fishing or on a boat or something like that? You mentioned it earlier.
It's on my boat. Yeah, it's definitely on my boat.
Awesome. Maybe you take a day and you go out on your boat, and when it's beautiful out, and you bring a notepad with you, and you just write like one page or one half of a page and say, in 3 to 5 years, here's what I want to be doing. I want my days to look like this. I want to wake up in the morning at this time. I want to do this thing first thing in the day. I want to hang out with these people. I want to look out my window and see this view or whatever that is. And that I think will be a really powerful starting point. And then you can take or leave this, because you've said you may have been, there may not have been alignment there, but I might even consider drafting that in a Word document, typing it up on your computer afterwards, and presenting the words draft vision for Mark family draft, and presenting that to your wife, and seeing what her reaction to that is. And asking her, could you please provide input on this? This is something I drafted. What do you think? Would you make any changes? Hopefully she does make changes. Otherwise she's not engaging with the process. But from that artifact, you could then begin saying, okay, if we like those things. Imagine we had all the money in the world. Life is good, because you do have all the money in the world. You're a financially independent millionaire at this point in time. So you can dream a little big in this. And you say, okay, we have all that. What do we want our life to look like? Okay, great. Here's what would have to be true financially with our household finances in order to make that happen. And this might be a way to re-engage that conversation with your wife, which I think is a major factor in your overall financial story here and talking about this. If you can arrive at a shared vision and alignment, you can maybe restart the conversation around household finances in a healthy way and figure some of those things out. How does that sound? What's your reaction to that?
No, that's all good, man. And that's definitely has not been something that has happened. So I'll definitely take that as an action item to move forward. So I like it.
Draft vision, right? The word draft is a large amount of work there. If you come in with something that is not aligned at first, or like way off or whatever, the word draft will save you there.
I want to bring up a document that I created last week or the week before I guess it was a couple of weeks ago. The fire planning worksheet that can help you figure out, in conjunction with Scott's draft vision. This is for you. This could be a separate one, could be for your wife, to talk about what you want your post-FI life to look like. I will send you a link. I'll email you the link, Mark, but I'll also include a link in our show notes so people listening can download this document as well. And it just asks you a bunch of different questions. What is it that you want your FI life to look like? What do you want to spend your days doing? Why do you want to be financially independent? A lot of people want to quit their job, but they quit their job because they work for, Scott Trench, the evil troll boss, who's actually not. It's not true. He's really nice. But if you just hate your boss, maybe you really like to work, or you would like to work if you didn't work for this evil troll. So go find a new job. If you want to be productive and, contribute to life in a different way, find a different position. Don't just sit here and, muddle through to get to the end so you can be FI. And then you're like, oh, now what? It's more of it's a guiding, help you figure out what you want, so then you can shape, what your FI number looks like. What does your I'm not so sure that 750 is your FI number. I think maybe 1.5 or 2 million would be closer to your FI number. And you do have a healthy net worth, a very healthy net worth. Scott, we really stink at saying hooray. So hooray, you're doing great, Mark. You really are doing great.
Okay, cool.
We should have said that at the beginning. We're like, oh, you got to do all this other stuff.
Yeah, you're crushing it. You spend $6,000 a month, not three, but it's still a very good, healthy spread between your investment, between your income and your expenses, and you have a great portfolio. You've got strong rental properties. I think if you're asking us for like money advice, if you just keep doing what you're doing, you're going to continue to compound your wealth, right? You've got a great situation. I think you have two cleanup items. I think you need to go through those portfolios. I think you got one to sell. What one in that, and just maybe just sell it and rebuy another one. That's better. That's a better cash flow. Just a simple repositioning exercise. And then I think you need to have some understanding work to do with what the heck your CFP is doing on in terms of your portfolio and why.
I'll send them your contact info.
Yeah, but I think you figure out like what are you doing here, and how is this working? Because not because he's doing anything wrong necessarily, or she. It's just because you don't understand it, and you need to understand it because it's half your wealth.
Yep.
But I think those are the two things. And then the bigger one is figuring out how to get addressing the elephant in the room, which is that half your spending is essentially payments to your wife. And I think that even though you may have had some conversations previously with that, trying to reapproach that in a healthy way is going to be a game changer for you. I think your biggest problem is you don't know what you want, and if you keep doing what you're doing, you're just going to keep growing your pile of wealth. There's no question about that because you're very efficient at generating wealth at this point. But I think you want to move towards something specific, and you're going to feel a lot better about that if you can do that, especially in partnership with your wife.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, that's something that I've honestly struggled with for a long time. I could see myself being, I guess in theory, being on the boat all day. I could see myself traveling the world. But is that something that I could do for 12 months, 5 years? I don't know. I took. So another point to mention is I actually took the entire month of January off because my company gave me that month for paternity leave. And it was the first time that I'd pretty much completely unplugged from work email, this, that, and the other since ever, high school. And it was incredible. I was able to be present with her, watched a lot of movies. It was amazing. So what I learned from that experience is that work will always be there. I don't know what I would do in early retirement, but the flip side of that is, do I actually retire and then just take some time to figure it out? Possibly. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I think you can experiment, and it doesn't have to be an event. You don't have to know what you want tomorrow. It can be a process of figuring it out. But I think that's your challenge right now. Congratulations. That's a great problem to have. You're not in I need to build up an emergency reserve or pay off a bunch of debt or whatever. I'm a multimillionaire and life is good, and I got to figure out what the heck I want to do with this immense power I've created for myself long term. And that's a fun. Make it a fun challenge. Don't. It doesn't have to be like things are horrible because I don't know exactly what I want to do next. It's like, no, it's great. I'm going to go try this out. I'm going to go try this out. You could start a business. You could switch up your career if you want to do something different. You could just keep doing what you're doing. That's a great option. And the pile will continue to grow, and your options will continue to expand if you keep doing that. But I think that just going through that exercise will be helpful because we can't give you advice on how to reposition your portfolio other than tweaking a few things. If it's not I want to live in Bermuda in 3 years and have a jet ski. Well, great. Okay, we can back into that and tell you what needs to be true or whether that's realistic.
Well, and it's so we actually have toyed with the idea of moving out of country, probably to Belize or somewhere like that. And if we did, then the question becomes is what do we do with the primary residence? My mortgage is all of $1,400 a month. We could probably clear about $3,000 a month in rent here for the house. And to your point, that would clearly bankroll our lives in a country like that as well.
Yeah, man, I think it's great, and I think that would be a really fun exercise to say. And here's a good one. Over the next 3 to 5 years, we don't know what we want. We're going to figure out what we want, and in that process, we're going to spend 6 months here with me chilling at home. We're going to spend 6 months in Belize with me working full time. We're going to spend 6 months in Idaho, or 6 months in Portugal, or 6 months or whatever. 3 months there, that could be a fun exercise as a thought starter, for example. Or we're gonna continue living here, and I'm gonna start a business. Or we're happy, things are good. I can see myself here for 5 more years, hanging out in my boat. With that, no change is necessary, and the pile will just continue to grow, even though we don't really need the pile to grow that much at this point. Or we'll just finish the journey, coast over the next 5 years to financial independence because you really need that probably 2 close 1.5 to 2 million is probably the range you need to spend $6,000 a month.
Yeah, and that's the other piece of it, and that's one of the other reasons that I don't really want to quit my job is because this year after taxes I'm probably going to save cash about 50 grand. Last year I saved 70 grand after tax, and that paid for my daughter's college. It's going back into another real estate and things like that. So the opportunity cost I think is there if I were to leave my job, which is one of the reasons that I don't really want to do it at this point.
Great, you don't have to. All you need to do is sit down and say, I got this great position. What do I want?
Okay.
Well, anything else I can help you with today, Mark, or is that helpful?
No, this is definitely helpful for sure. Some of it I definitely already knew, but it's nice to kind of confirm some of the thoughts that I had. And I think that the fire planning worksheet and the vision documents will definitely be integral. Because you made the point before, Scott, I need to figure out what the next 3 to 5 years looks like in a perfect world, and kind of start forging the path to get there.
And that's a hard change. Most of us, most of us don't spend our lives thinking about exactly do I want? It's like, what do I need to do? I need to get good grades. I need to get a good job. I need to start saving money. I need to do this. And then, you grind long enough and you look up and you're a millionaire with all these options. And it's a very hard pivot to be like, oh, I can just like do what I want.
Yeah, that's kind of what happens, to be honest with you. Like once I and again, it's a good problem to have, but it's also a problem nonetheless.
Well, thank you very much for coming on the show today, and we're glad this was helpful. We have a couple of good action items there, and hopefully they'll be helpful. We'd love to check in a couple of months and hear how things are going.
Absolutely. Yeah, let's do it again, guys. I appreciate the time, and thanks for the conversation.
Awesome. Mark, thank you so much for your time, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
All right. That was Mark. That was Scott, as you alluded to at the beginning of the show. That was a fun twist. And I do think that in order for Mark and his wife to fully embrace this fire lifestyle, I think that a money date would be in order. My action items for Mark would be to have a money date with his wife. And this is because they're not on the same page financially. This is going to be a delicate introduction. Let's listen to episode 157 together. Let's listen to that new money documentary on Netflix. What is that called? Getting Good with Money?
Yeah. Well, I think I completely agree with that. If you're going to suggest stuff, thinking Get Smart with Money is the new documentary. There's Playing with Fire. It's another good documentary. There's episode 157 of our podcast, of course. But it might be hard to get your spouse to like listen to or watch one of these things. But it probably will be an easier entry point to say, hey, spouse, this is what I was thinking about this, and I love you very much, and this is what I want our life to look like maybe in a couple of years. So I put together a draft of it and would love your input on it. Would you be willing to look at that with me one day this week, like Saturday morning or something like that, over breakfast? And that is, I think, a really good way to break the subject of, okay, oh, this person wants these things, I want these things. We're actually very aligned on most of those. And then I love the tool from Playing with Fire that you mentioned around listing out the top 10 favorite things you like to do and saying, let's optimize our life so that we're doing more of those 10 things, and not spending money or doing things that are not in that top 10 list, or reallocating time and money to enabling that. I think that's how you broach the conversation with money, not by, saying, hey, I want you to spend an hour and a half watching a fire documentary with me. That's great. Maybe that's after the first conversation.
We did have a guest who said, when I want my husband to listen to something, I just lock him in the car with me and we drive for a while and I make him listen. And, that might work. That might not work. Maybe if they have a great big long road trip coming up, that might work. Hey, I'd like to listen to this podcast together. Whatever you can do to get the conversation going. And it has been quite a while since we recorded episode 157, Scott, but I remember that we had several ways to get the conversation going. Rule number 1, make it non-confrontational and non-judgmental. This is how I see our lives. Us spending time together. Like, you get married to spend time with someone. You don't get married to never, ever see them. So I think there's a lot of ways to have a conversation, but non-confrontational and non-judgmental should be in the forefront of your mind when you're thinking about how to approach it.
Speaking of Get Smart with Money, that's fantastic. It's a new documentary out on Netflix. It features Mr. Money Mustache. It features Paula Pant. It features Tiffany Aliche, and it features Ross McDonald. And it was just great. It follows 4 different money stories, and my favorite part of it was Mr. Money Mustache follows a fairly well-to-do couple in Boulder, Colorado, who are looking to achieve financial independence. And at one point, they cut $3,000 out of their spending. Hopefully this is not too much of a spoiler. And Mr. Money Mustache's reaction to that is something to the effect of, wow, you cut $3,000 out of your spending. That's like cutting a whole family's budget out of your budget. And I think Mark's budget today really reminded me of that, reinforced that. So, anyways, it's a great show. There's folks from different walks of life, and it was really a fun thing and pretty educational.
I actually have not seen it yet. We're having a watch party at the co-working space in just next week, and I'm very excited to watch it. It actually came out when FinCon started, so we couldn't do the watch party. I am very excited.
Should we get out of here, Mindy?
Yes, we should. Wow, we really flip-flopped these roles today, Scott. That's great. From the Finance Friday episode this week of the BiggerPockets Money Podcast, he is Scott Trench, and I am Mindy Jensen saying, bye-bye, butterfly.